welcome to an episode of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo. So, the film that I'll be discussing, I would say, is a fun one. So, I'll be discussing the film The Faculty. The Faculty is a 1998 sci fi horror film. It is directed by Robert Rodriguez, who's known for doing the Spy Kids films and Desperado. The film is written by Kevin Williamson, who's known for the Scream franchise. The story is by David Weicher, who did Midnight Madness, and Bruce Kimmel, who did The Creature Wasn't Nice. So the film stars Jordana Brewster, Elijah Wood, and Josh Hartnett. Here is the synopsis. To the students at Harrington High, the principal and her posse of teachers have always been a little odd, but lately they've been behaving positively alien. Controlled by otherworldly parasites, the faculty try to infect students one by one. Cheerleader Delilah, played by Jordana Brewster, football player Stan, played by Sean Hattasey, drug dealer Zeke, played by Josh Hartnett, and new girl Mary Beth, played by Laura Harris, team up with some of their other classmates to fight back against the invaders. So the film was released on December 25th, 1998 in theaters. It had a budget of $15 million. In terms of box office, it made over $40.2 million domestically. It opened at number 5 domestically with over $11.6 million. It was beaten by films including Patch Adams, Stepmom, and You've Got Mail. In terms of critical reception, it has a 3.4 rating on Letterboxd. It was nominated for 2 Saturn Awards, which were Best Horror Film and Best Performance by a Younger Actor/Actress for Josh Hartnett. So at the time of this recording, it is available to stream on Netflix and Hollywood Suite and is available on demand, so check your local provider. All right, let's get into First Discovery. So I believe not long after this movie came out, I did see it on TV. It might have been Much Music back when Much Music was playing music in that channel. But yeah, I enjoyed it at the time when I first saw it, and of course, watching it over years, and also for this podcast, for me, I would say it still holds up. It's very entertaining. I saw the movie The Invasion of the Body Snatchers a few years ago, I think on streaming, the one with Donald Sutherland. With this movie, watching it now, it kind of reminds me like of a teen version of that movie, but of course, more humor to it, and it's less bleak compared to Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So I won't spoil it for those that have not seen that movie. I do recommend you see Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but yeah, I would say with this film is more hopeful compared to that one. So let's get into the highlights. So obviously this movie is an ensemble movie, but I would say our core group of characters, they have their own storylines and have their moments throughout this movie. So we have first Delilah. So she essentially runs a school a paper as an editor, but is also a cheerleader, which we don't see much of. But but of her, she's often quite rude and dismissive. Particularly, there was that moment when she and everyone are at Zeke's house and they do the drug test. So that was like an interesting moment with what happens to her character in that scene. But yeah, she's quite enjoyable. Also, too, we have Stan. So Stan, he is the football quarterback. He decides to leave the team to focus on school, which is, hey, it's not bad, not bad. It's so funny that some characters thought he's having an existential crisis. I mean, maybe, but judging like with that opening scene when Coach Willis is essentially having a crash out, I, I wouldn't blame Stan for leaving the team. So there's that. And then we have Casey. Casey is often bullied in this movie, so he is like the nerd character essentially. But he loves to take his photographs with the camera, and loves getting into scientific things, like when he found the parasite at outside in the back, not backyard, I can't remember, but he found it outside essentially, and that led to discovery of the creatures um, have to sustain through water and all that stuff. So there's that, and then we have Stokely. Stokely is always wants to be left alone, but she has feelings essentially, because she has feelings for Stan. And it's funny that in this movie she bumps into him three times. The first time was during the character introduction, and then the second time was in the hallway at some point, and then the third time, well, Mary Beth caused it. And then they eventually have a relationship, so that's interesting. And then Zeke, he's sort of like the kid that's not popular but not a geek, but essentially is doing his own thing by selling supplies to different students. But he essentially wants to be more than that. I get the sense that in this movie. And then Mary Beth is the new girl at school, and she often acts quite friendly, too friendly. Especially like when we get to that twist of her character. But yeah, that's our core group of characters, and essentially they all embody, I would say, the typical stereotypes you see in high school movies. So Delilah, you could say she is the popular girl. Stan is the football jock. Casey is the nerd. Stokely is the loner. Zeke is the I don't know, outcast is the right word, but those guys that are always just doing their own thing. And Mary Beth is the new girl at school. So there's that. And I would say the cast is quite stacked, and have gone on to do notable things since this movie. So, with our core group of characters, so the main students, so we have Elijah Wood, of course, who's known for the Lord of the Rings movies. And I think I saw the Lord of the Rings movies before seeing this movie, and I find this interesting with Elijah Wood. He plays a different sort of character compared to what I've known him in the Lord of the Rings movies. So I found that was interesting. Jordana Brewster, of course, she's gone on to do the Fast and the Furious movies. I think throughout the years with those movies, her character has been underutilized, but it's neither here or there. But yeah, it was nice to see her in a different type of role. So Sean Hattersley has gone on to do a lot of stuff in TV. He's having a moment, of course, with The Pit, which did very well at the Emmys, and he won an Emmy for that role. So congratulations! But yes, a different role for him, I would say, for this. Clea Duvall, of course. I've seen her in the what was it? I think she was in She Is All that I saw prior to this movie. Josh Hartnett, of course, he was like the heartthrob at the time this movie came out. So I would say for me, he was one of the standouts in terms performance wise for this movie, even though everyone did a great job in this movie. And then Laura Harris, of course, I'm not too familiar with her work. I've seen that she's done a lot of stuff in TV, and she's from Canada, so which is nice as a fellow Canadian. I'm like, that's nice. That's nice. Also, too, we have Usher as Gabe. Interesting that here, at least he does a role that's not involved with music. And I would say acting wise, it's one of his notable roles with Usher. So he did great here. And then I want to note the two actors that played the couple that are often seen fighting. So John Abrahams, I believe, was in one of the scary movies, either the first one or second one. And then we have Summer Phoenix. They play Fuck You Boy and Fuck You Girl. It's hilarious that they're credited as that. But yeah, throughout the movie, it's kind of like this running gag where they're often seen like yelling at each other, more like Summer Phoenix is yelling at John Abrahams in this movie. But that's hilarious. And then, of course, we have our faculty, our staff. So we have Robert Patrick. I wouldn't say like this character is a stretch compared to the type of roles he plays in terms of villainous roles, like with in Terminator 2. So, so yeah, he was hilarious in this movie because he often yells at towards his players, and yeah, I bet he had a lot of fun with the role in this one. And then we have BB Newirth, of course, who has done a lot of stuff on Broadway. She plays Principal Drake in this movie. And then we have Piper Laurie, who plays Mrs. Olsen. She was also great too. Oh, and she passed away a few years ago, so R.I.P. Selma Hayek, of course, as Nurse Harper. Is funny that her character, we see her, she's often sick, but then once she turns, she's a-okay. And then Famke Janssen as Miss Berg. It's funny, her character has a little something going on with Zeke. So that was quite funny. Daniel Von Bargen as Mr. Tate. See, it's funny. I thought that with his character, it felt like he did not want to be there. I mean, of course, he wants to teach, but I think because of what the school is going through in terms of budget cuts, it's like, yeah, it's quite stressful for him, and also too with the other teachers in this movie. And then, of course, Jon Stewart. And throughout the years, I'm kind of surprised, like, oh, Jon Stewart is in this movie because he's often known for his hosting stuff, like with The Daily Show. And then, of course, we have the other adults cast members, such as Christopher McDonald. He plays Casey's dad. It's interesting that he's credited as Chris McDonald. Not sure why, but but yeah, at least he kind of plays like the straight role here compared to, let's say, Happy Gilmore as Shooter McGavin. Oh my god! Oh, the sequel for that movie was not great. Entertaining, but not great. But anyways, yeah, he did great in this movie. And then, of course, we have Dwayne Martin as the police officer that comes to the school with his partner to investigate what happened. And yeah, I would say yeah, the cast is quite solid there, especially for a movie that came out in the late '90s. Yeah, pretty stacked, I would say. Also too, I find it's hilarious that Zeke's drugs that he has that he puts in the shape of a pen. It's hilarious that it can kill aliens. So I mean, it's quite unique. It's quite out there, but but hey, it's effective at the end of the day. So yeah, I mean that's something you rarely see in these types of movies. So hey, kudos to the writers or whoever came up with the idea, like to use all that stuff. Awesome. And then it's funny that for the aliens, water is essentially like a drug for them, where they can't live without it. Because throughout the movie, we see with the teachers, they drink water like crazy. Makes you wonder, do they have to keep going to the bathroom? But but no, but no, it's hilarious. And then the teachers at one point, they have bottles and even jugs stacked in the staff room. Wild, wild. And interesting too with this movie that when the people turn, when they get turned, they kind of change physically, more in terms of their appearance. Well, they still look the same, but it's just in terms of wardrobe wise, they're quite different, particularly with the female characters. I guess to show that they're more confident than they were before. I mean, a notable example I would say with Miss Burke, because she before was wearing the glasses and the scrunched up hair, and then when she turned, she's like wearing like the red shirt. She's not wearing her glasses, so I thought that was interesting because with the male characters when they turned, they still look the same, but for the female characters, they dress more fancy, I suppose. So that was interesting. And I liked how with this movie, tension is used, I would say, quite effective to really illustrates the paranoia that the characters are feeling. So, for example, when they are trying to leave the school, everyone at this point, most of the people are already turned. They're like staring at them to kind of point them out. Essentially, it kind of reminds me of Inception when Elliot Page's character is in the dream with Leonardo DiCaprio and and sees that everyone in the dream is staring at her because they don't belong. And with this moment in this movie, it shows, yeah, that they don't belong per se. So I thought that was interesting. And then also too, the moment at Zeke's house when everyone has to do the drug test to prove that they're still human. I mean, that's a brilliant. So I would say it's one of the highlights in terms of scenes for this movie. And clearly, like, we see trust issues within the group, even though they do know each other to an extent. But I found that was a brilliant way to use tension and all that stuff. So there's that. And also, too, as a highlight, football. I mean, no surprise for a small town, but football is a big thing for not just the school, but for the town as well too. Like, they're treated as if it's the Super Bowl essentially, where we see a bunch of fireworks. Now I assume with this game it's just a regular game. It's not like it's homecoming game or the finals, but yeah, it's treated like the Super Bowl with all the fireworks and all that stuff, and the crowds are packed, which is nuts. I felt bad for the teachers where they had to suffer through budget cuts all because the money is going towards the football team because it draws a big audience, which is nuts. But I often see that in a lot of movies that deal with that subject matter, but it's nuts. Um, as I've mentioned earlier, Coach Willis, his crash out during the opening scene is hilarious. It shows, you could say that he has anger management issues. I mean, I guess that's part of the territory when you're the football coach. Who knows? But it's hilarious. And I don't blame Stan for leaving the team. I know that he wants to focus on his studies, but probably also too did not want to deal with Coach Willis. So there's that. And I enjoyed the introduction of the main characters. I found when that happened after the titles, it felt seamless because I imagined there had to be a lot of planning involved to make sure that everyone is at their mark when they're supposed to. And interesting, yeah, like, because we rarely see this these days, but interesting that we see freeze frames to show the characters essentially. So there's that with their names. And I would say the shots of when the creature approaches Stokely from the back when she's at the pool, and then also too after when Casey stabs Mary Beth with the drugs, and then the a bit of it splashes on Casey's face. I thought those were cool shots. I'm like, those were cool. Really enjoyed that. There's that. And let's go into lowlights. So I want to talk about the posters for this movie. So in terms of the design itself, I don't have an issue with. It's more about who's in the poster. So let me just share my screen. So for the audio listeners, I'm sure you could Google this or just check out the video version of this episode. So for example, here's one poster where we see the majority of the cast with the exception of Mary Beth, where she's replaced by Usher. And then we have another one here that features most of the characters except for Stan, where he's replaced by Usher. But I just don't get the choice here to have Usher in the cover in place of other characters. Now, had, let's say, Usher was part of the core group of characters where he was also a focus, I would not have an issue with this. But using him in place of others, I did not get that choice. Honestly, I felt like maybe they put him in the poster to since he's also a singer, and I imagine he was popular at the time, probably to use that to sell the movie. I'm not sure really, but I did not get this. So I did not get that choice. Also, too, as a low light, um, so Robert Rodriguez, he directed the movie. I don't know like where I would rank this amongst his filmography, but I just feel like for this movie, it feels quite different compared um, to the stuff that he usually directs. Now, I have a fun fact where apparently he was not the original choice to direct this movie, but yeah, this definitely felt like a direct for hire type gig. Because usually with his movies, we see a lot of like visual cues that he often uses. I don't know like if he could not use the typical trademarks or if this was a creative choice. Who knows? But yeah, I don't know where I would rank this amongst his filmography. But I would say at least in terms of stuff that he directed, it's one of the best scripts. He obviously did not write it, but yeah, I would say with Robert Rodriguez in terms of his works is very hit and miss and all that stuff. But yeah, it feels quite different. So I don't know if this will be like a low light. I don't know, depends on how you look at it. Because it's definitely like a great film with the faculty, but in terms of being a Robert Rodriguez film, I'm not quite sure there. Also, too, I felt it was obvious that Mary Beth was going to be the queen of the aliens because there's too many coincidences. Like after when she joined the school, because a lot of stuff happened after her arrival. Now, because it would not make sense just based on how the film goes, it does not make sense if the other characters were the leader of the aliens, but yeah, it just felt obvious with that choice. Um, and I felt that when people turned, there was some bit inconsistency in terms of how fast they were infected or not. For the most part, it seems like they get turned instantly, while for others, like it was unclear on when that happened. So, for instance, with Delilah, so after like when Casey and her and Casey they see Mrs. Olson, Coach Will's turn Nurse Harper, obviously they run off, but then we see her on the next day she's wearing glasses, which is out of character in terms of how she typically dresses in the movie. And and then I guess like when they're at Zeke's house, she it turns out that she's an alien. So I'm just wondering when did the turn happen? So there's two possibilities. Either off screen after that incident, or it could have been when they were at the classroom when Furlong turned out to be an alien, and then there was a shot of the fingers where it crawled on her. So maybe that could have happened. Who knows? But it's a bit unclear. And then also too with Stokely, it's safe to assume that she got turned when she was inside the pool. But then if you remember back when they were at Zeke's house when they had to do the drug test, after when she took it, she had a headache. So I'm just wondering, did she turn not long after that scene? Maybe during the furlong incident? I don't know, but yeah, I think there could have been clarity, even though I get that they're trying to do it to um, make it ambiguous for the audience to guess when it happened, and also to create tension and all that stuff. But I just feel like with those parts, it could have been a bit more clear. Um, Also, too, so at the beginning, so with Coach Willis, so after his crash out, essentially, he gets approached by some unknown figure, most likely Mary Beth. But essentially, not long after, he approaches Principal Willis inside her office at night, and at this point, he was already turned. But I'm just wondering Was he actually trying to sexually harass her at the office? It was just a bit weird there. So I did not get why that happened. Like he could have just tried to turn her without doing all that stuff, but it was like, Also, too, I wondered though. So after that scene, Principal Drake tries to escape, but then she gets stabbed by Mrs. Olsen multiple times with the scissors. So I guess Mrs. Olsen at some point got turned, even though it was unclear when that happened. But whatever. So, but then later on in the movie, we see that she's alive, and I'm just wondering how is that possible? So I guess that once you get turned, it heals all wounds. I don't know. I don't know. And lastly, so after when Casey saves the day, big heroic moment for him. It goes to 1 month later, and then apparently Casey is dating Delilah. I'm like, what? Because I did not get any chemistry between them. I don't know. Maybe they're supposed to have something once they were in the closet together, witnessing Coach Willis and Mrs. Olsen with Nurse Harper. But I did not buy that part, honestly, with them. And then also, too, with Zeke being on the football team, I get that, he had to do something, but I don't know if I buy him being on a football team, but okay. Okay. Alrighty, so let's get into the trivia. So there was a lot of fun facts for this movie. I'm not going to share everything. But here's a few that I will share. So apparently in 1990, David Wetcher and Bruce Kimmel wrote their first draft of the script and sent it out, but there were no buyers. It wasn't until the success of Scream that Miramax, the first one, Miramax bought the script and rushed it into production. Bob Weinstein and Harvey Weinstein brought it in for Kevin Williamson to do rewrites, keeping the basic story but rewriting the dialogue and adding new characters to make it more quote unquote hip. So originally, Kevin Williamson was going to direct the film, but he chose not to so that he could direct the script that he wrote, Teaching Mrs. Tingle. The Weinsteins brought in Robert Rodriguez to direct the film instead. Interesting, interesting. And as a note, I see that apparently Kevin Williamson he's going to direct the upcoming Scream film, which I'm sure by the time this episode comes out, the movie would have been already out there. But yeah, apparently he's directing it, but he's not writing the script for it. So that's interesting. Interesting. All right. Also, too, for the role of Delilah, apparently it was originally written for Charisma Carpenter, but she turned it down because she felt it was similar to her character Cordelia on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So Sarah Michelle Gellar, the who plays Buffy in the show, she turned it down. She turned a role for the faculty. It's unclear if it was this role or if it was something else, but she turned down a role. And also, too, in exchange for product placement in this film for clothier Tommy Hilfiger's fashion line, the teens from the movie's cast appeared together in a TV commercial and print ad campaign for Tommy jeans throughout 1998. Interesting, because I was able to find the commercial on YouTube just before recording this, and yeah, I found it's interesting. It's more like behind the scenes of them wearing the clothes, so that's interesting. Interesting. Also, too, apparently several scenes involving a character named Venus, played by Kidada Jones, were shown in TV previews for the film, as well as Tommy Hilfiger commercials, but was cut from the film. She was also visible in a scene in the theatrical version, standing next to Gabe in Mr. Furlong's science class, where they're looking at new species at the aquarium. Interesting. I kind of want to look for that now, but interesting. I wonder if they cut her scenes just for the sake of time. Who knows? Or maybe because I did see that. I think the movie got reissued by I can't remember if it was Shout or Arrow, one of those places where they got a new 4K Blu-ray for that movie. So maybe they include extended version for that. I don't know, but yeah, I want to look for that now. So also too, Elijah Wood, Clea Duvall, Jordana Brewster, and Sean Hattersley appeared in the music video for Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, which was performed by the class of 99, which is featured in the film's soundtrack. So in keeping with her character Stokely, Clea Duvall does not lip sync the lyrics with her co-stars. Interesting. Yeah, and I also watched that before recording this episode, and I would say, oh, it's not bad with the video itself. So there's that. In hindsight, director Robert Rodriguez said, quote, making the faculty was just a blast. There was so much young energy, and the actors were just so into it. I will say I was worried it wouldn't do well, though. I wanted them to use a different title because our target audience wasn't gonna want to see a movie about teachers. So I fought for a better title. He also added, quote, I think they didn't know how to sell it, which is why I think so many people discovered it later and are now coming out and being like, hey, this movie is pretty good. Interesting. So I do think the marketing, maybe also to the release date coming out on Christmas Day, probably those are factors on why the movie didn't do well. I don't know what other films came out around the same time. Maybe that's also a factor as well too, but yeah, I think yeah they could have went with a better title with the movie because seeing the title "The Faculty," you assume is going to be about teachers. Now, obviously, teachers play an important role in this movie in terms of them, after being turned, they influence the kids and all that stuff. But yeah, I think it could have been a better title, but it stuck. So there's that. Also, too, during an interview with Deadline, Ryan Coogler mentioned that the faculty is one of many inspirations for the movie Sinners. He says, quote, I love the faculty from Rodriguez. I love how he mashed up Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Thing, but set it in a 90s high school. I love the confusing mishmash of movie and setting. Interesting. Because I imagine that with the Mary Beth character probably like is the influence for I forgot what Jack O'Connell's character's name is in Sinners 'cause it's been a while since I've seen the movie. But since yeah, his character is the main villain essentially, so I bet Mary Beth had a influence with that character. So yeah, I could see that for sure. But I need to rewatch Sinners. And lastly, a remake for the film was announced in January 2025. So that's in the works with Drew Hancock, who did the film Companion. He's slated to write and direct the film. Robert Rodriguez is going to produce the film along with Miramax, which is under the BIN/slash Paramount co-ownership and Boulder Light Pictures. So I don't know if I'm a fan of this being remade since this movie is great and all that stuff, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm open to it, but we'll see. Assuming if it actually happens. Alrighty, so should this movie be rediscovered? I say absolutely yes, because it's just a fun movie. It's a fun sci-fi horror movie. Sure, you could say that it borrows from Invasion of the Body Snatchers in ways, but yeah, I would say it's a fun movie. Sure, it's cheesy because it's a teen movie, but I would say it's self-aware as opposed to trying to be something that it's not. All right, so that pretty much concludes this episode of the podcast. So you can find me on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at Numpy Malloy. You can find the podcast on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at RD Movies Pod. Visit buymeacoffee.com/RD Movies Pod to support the podcast via donation and to look at exclusive posts there. You could join the Rediscovered Movies Hub, which is our community group on the official Wix website, which is rdmoviespod.wixsite.com/official, where you can interact with others, share thoughts on the podcast, and more. On Spotify, you can answer the feature poll, leave a comment, and rate the podcast. On Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, and Podchaser, you can leave a review and rate the podcast. You can submit questions, comments, suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com, or you can fill out the contact form on our link tree to be featured on a Q&A episode, which will air after the end of the season. All right. I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you on the next one.